Hello, everybody. We are here for a Wednesday night quick buzz. We did a Tuesday night quick buzz to talk about all of the injuries from the week and the waivers and whatnot. And tonight we're going to do another quick buzz, but we're not going to generally focus on 100% on players, but topics going on in the league. We have several topics to talk about. We have COVID. We have what's going on in Washington. We have several different things. If you bring up a couple disappointing, as well as players to pick up for the rest of the year. A little bit, one quick area of injuries. We'll talk about tomorrow night's game because it's immediate. It's coming up tomorrow night. Fournette listed as doubtful. Does not look like he's going to play. Of course, Godwin has already been listed out. McCoy's already been listed out. Evans is questionable. He generally plays through his questionable status, but we'll see. And we'll see how effective he is. Of course, they lost O.J. Howard. The team's getting a little bit depleted, but they still have this guy named Tom Brady who seems to get it done when he needs to, right? So that's a little bit about tomorrow night. If you have any of those players, look for people to stream. But what we want to do, we're going to do little 5-minute segments on some different issues. And one, of course, that is an immediate issue that a lot of people have to look at right now. And we're here with the commish, and 2020 should be joining us soon. What do you think about the whole COVID situation going on right now? I have some thoughts on it. I'd like to hear it from you about what's going on and what your thoughts are.
Before I do, I just want to let you know that I can see the reflection of your screen in your glasses, so please do not watch porn while streaming on the podcast because I would be able to see it. So I'm
just asking me not to.
Right, that's a good point. So our audience could enjoy. I assume you're talking about the COVID situation in the NFL versus the COVID situation worldwide. In the NFL, I'm actually surprised, as you know from our preseason podcasts, that we even had a season. I didn't think that we were going to hold out as long as we have. But I think what happens right now is that as long as the players are not being placed in a bubble, and by that, I don't mean the same thing that the NBA went through, but even if teams isolate the way that they do during training camp, I think there'd be less chance of spreading. We know that Stephen Gilmore got COVID from Cam Newton Friday night when they went to dinner. Now, there's nothing wrong with going to dinner, but this is the way it spreads. And right now, the Titans practice supposedly illegally after Troy Vincent, the head of the NFLPA, told them not to. They went ahead and practiced anyway. We're going to see probably historic penalties come down on the Titans. 2 more Titans yesterday were tested positive. I don't even know if the Titans and Bills are going to play Sunday. I don't even know if the Patriots are going to be able to play against Denver on Sunday. I don't think the NFL knows. Now, supposedly Stephen Gilmore was the only other Patriot that tested positive, but sometimes it takes 2 to 3 days before we find these things out.
Or even more, as we're finding out in the White House, it's 2, 3, 4, 6 days later. And then you're testing positive because it's like incubates in your system, and it could be several tests before you can test positive.
Right. So these idiots don't care enough about their friends, their family, the other players. It's going to spread like wildfire. We do have a call coming in. Let's grab this real quick.
All right.
Hey, welcome to the Buzz. Who's calling?
This is Kenneth from Texas.
Hey, Kenneth. How are you?
Pretty good. I won my week last week by a quite considerable margin.
All right.
Great. Good job.
160 points.
Oh, my gosh.
That puts me 3-1 right now.
Oh, you're sitting pretty.
Anyway, my reason for calling is I put a waiver claim in for a Myles Gaskin.
Yeah.
2-part question. 1, was that a wise move? And 2, would he be a wise play this week?
Well, let's start off with this. Who are your other running backs?
I can't think of any of them right off the top of my head.
Not a problem. So it all depends who your other running backs are. The Dolphins are playing against the 49ers this Sunday, which is not an easy matchup. I like Gaskin. He's a good flex play if you don't have somebody else, if you don't have a wide receiver or running back who you can anticipate to get more than 10 points, then Gaskin's not a bad choice. He is the starter in Miami. Reppin, he is going to be getting the ball, whether it's a catch or a run. So it's not necessarily a bad play. It's just it all depends on who else you have instead of Myles Gaskin. The 49ers right now, by the way, and we know that they've been depleted. They're giving up 110 yards a game on the ground. So they're right in the middle. Okay, so it's not the 49ers we saw last year. They're still pretty good, but I do anticipate Gaskin to probably get around 10 points this week. What do you think, Cyclop?
I think it's a really nice waiver pickup because he is becoming more and more involved in the offense. The biggest issue with Gaskin right now is that OJ Howard is getting the goal line.
No, Jordan Howard, right.
Sorry, what did I say?
OJ Howard.
Yeah.
The only thing he's getting is lunch because he's not playing.
He's getting the goal line, ball at the moment. So, Gaskin's kind of this in between the 20s guy, which can certainly rack up yards. But, you saw Breida a little bit last week. So it does eat into his repetitions. And then losing the goal line is a little bit of a hurt. So, yes, as a flex, if you need him, or if you need to stream somebody, if you have Tennessee players or, these players that potentially might not play, very good addition to your team.
And in the comments section, Kenneth, if you want to just put who your other running backs are, we'll make a comment on that based on who else you have. But I agree. Good pickup. All right. But thanks again for calling. We really appreciate it. All right. Go ahead, Brett. So you were talking about the COVID situation.
Yeah. So where was I? I gotta get back on that. Yeah. So I heard a great analogy today, and I'm gonna use it. I didn't write down who was saying it, but it's like this ship with holes at the bottom, right? And it's like, okay, you have this situation in Atlanta, and we kind of put a patch on that. Nothing happened. Then you have this situation in Tennessee, and it's like, all right, we kind of fixed that little hole by moving the game. But then all week, more things are happening. And then it happens in New England, and they ended up playing, and we'll see what happens there. And it's like one hole after another. And just somehow, if they don't figure out a way very quickly to go into a bubble, I do see this becoming a bigger issue as the weeks go by. And,
that's a great analogy. That really is a good analogy.
Yeah. So I would love to take credit for it, but I can't. But I did like, and I thought it's very, apropos at the moment. So yeah, that was one of the things. And so you got to keep an eye on your players, got to keep an eye on these teams day by day with what's happening and prepare for it. And,
right.
And it's, so next topic I'd like to talk about is the Washington football team. All this happened since last night. We wake up this morning and at 7:00 in the morning, what do we hear? We hear that Haskins is benched. Now, not only is Haskins benched, and Kyle Allen is the new quarterback, right? But Haskins now isn't even the backup. Who steps in is Alex Smith, right? We know the kind of quarterback Alex Smith is. That's not the question. The other problem is we also know the kind of quarterback that Kyle Allen is. He came in last year in Carolina. Now he knows the system there, right, that Rivera runs, which is good. And he came in and had a couple good games and then went very flat, for the most of the second half of the season. So the question there, a lot of people have been picking up Gibson. He's been having good games. And McLaurin has been having pretty good games. So I guess the question is, what do you do with those players? What is the concern there with Kyle Allen stepping in?
I don't think there's any concern at all. I think if anything, McLaurin, people think that he did well under Haskins. When Haskins came in, he actually went down a little at the end of last year. So I think what we're going to see is an increase in volume to McLaurin. I think we're going to see an increase in volume possibly to Gibson. What happens is, and Washington's defense isn't that bad, but Gibson is a 4-down back where he's going to stay in, and if they're behind, he's going to stay in and get a lot of catches similar to what Chris Thompson did, but at the same time, he's still running between the tackles. He even had him on the goal line last week.
Right.
I see these guys doing well, but the thing that gets me is Washington decided to go after Chase Young as number 2 in the draft this past year. Right. Everyone except for Dan Snyder knew that they needed a quarterback. They knew that Dwayne Haskins was not the answer.
Right.
They passed up on Tua. They passed up on Herbert.
Thankfully.
And because of that, they've now set that franchise back. Do they have a great defender in Chase Young? Absolutely. But let me ask you this. How many championships has the Houston Texans won with J.J. Watt? It takes a lot more than that. It takes a full team. And right now, that team is a mess. And until that owner goes, it's going to continue to be a mess.
Yeah. I mean, and we wish him all the best. Rivera's going through his cancer treatments.
Yeah.
He's taking naps during the day. That certainly, I'm not putting him in the same realm as Trump with taking his drugs and making decisions. But, are certain things clouding his decisions and what's going on? I was never a huge Rivera fan after his first few seasons.
You're there in North Carolina, so you have more of the Panther news and information about him.
I mean, he's a good coach. He's a player coach, but I kind of saw his playbook kind of go flat, and it was a little bit too one-dimensional at times. So we'll see how it plays out. It'll be interesting, like you say.
It used to be Cam running up the middle. Then it became CMC running around the end. And that was the offense. Yeah.
I mean, and it's not a bad deal when you have those players, but he doesn't have those players in Washington at the moment. Yep. So we'll see how that plays out. See if Kyle Allen will be a kind of a boom or bust kind of addition to that team.
Yeah, I would not pick up Kyle Allen, but I would definitely put a little more stock in Terry McLaurin and Antonio Gibson at this point. Back to the COVID issue real quick. I just wanted to mention one bit of news that Corey Davis was put on the COVID list. If anybody like myself has Corey Davis, go ahead. You can, if you're a commissioner, have the foresight to create IR spots, go ahead and put him in IR, grab somebody else. What I recommend is that you grab if you have the luxury of doing that, grab a backup running back that you think might end up being the starter if one of your guys gets hurt or somebody else's. For example, in Seattle, grab Carlos Hyde. In Dallas, grab Tony Pollard. You can have somebody for a week just to see if God forbid somebody gets hurt. But if they do, you're in a good position. Corey Davis is still on IR, and you can always switch it out next week.
Right. Other players like Chase Edmonds, who's getting more touches. Yeah, players that.
I assume those were that he was already taken along with the Ernest Johnson and, And by the way, Justin Jackson and Rex Burkhead were the other two that Kenneth said were available. I think that picking up Gaskin instead of those two is more of a sure thing. The ceiling is not as high as it might be for Justin Jackson temporarily, but I think you're going to get more consistent touches with Myles Gaskin.
Burkhead's either going to get like 6 points or 36 points.
Right.
I mean, he's going to get 3 touchdowns and 50 yards. Of course, with Michelle on the IR at the moment, does give him some more touches, but James White is back, so that kind of takes away some of his catches. So again, you never really want to put too much depth on your team into New England running backs, which we've certainly learned over the years, right?
Yep, absolutely. I've lost because of that, and I've won because of that. So it's really difficult to see. I've played where someone picked up Rex Burkhead in the playoffs, and they beat me because of it. Now Damian Harris also getting half the carries. I'm not touching any of the Patriot backs right now.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, so I know you didn't prepare for this, but I'm going to throw it out there. I
Oh
have
boy.
one thing I wanted to discuss was like a player that's kind of been a bust out of the draft. Now we're a quarter of the way through the season, so we already have a nice, look at some of the players. So I'm just kind of thinking about one, maybe two players that have been maybe a bust, and another player who's been a surprise that you may want to pick up for the rest of the season, right? So I'll give you a minute while I discuss the two that I went with quarterbacks.
Okay.
For mine, and if you want to look at a running back or think about maybe you have someone in mind. So I went with who did I go with? Deshaun Watson. Okay, and he's not doing bad. He's a good quarterback, but a lot of people took him as like the number 3 quarterback off the board, right, this year.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of quarterbacks getting in that 30 to 50 range every week. Deshaun Watson, and depending on your scoring system, hasn't broken 30 in the first 4 weeks. Now, of course, we know this week, we know he lost Hopkins, which we see has been a big, thorn in his side, not having him. We know that they fired the coach this week, so who knows what'll happen. We know they picked up David Johnson. I don't think that's exactly turned out how they thought.
Yeah.
Probably one of the main reasons why O'Brien got fired, right? Because he was also the GM.
Right.
So my pick kind of for a bust, just because where he was drafted and where he was listed, is Deshaun Watson. Now, could he pick it up for the rest of getting 25 to 30 points a week isn't bad. But there's a lot of other quarterbacks getting that were picked much later. Okay, so staying on quarterbacks, you get a guy who comes in who, I don't know if he had an in with the team doctor or what, but the team doctor punctures Tyrod Taylor's lung, and that may be the end of Tyrod Taylor for the Chargers. Right? I mean,
yeah.
Do you see him coming back? Yeah, they said he's going to come back, but Herbert looks good. Fantasy wise, he has scored over 30 points 3 weeks in a row now. Right? So I look at him as someone that if he's not already rostered in your league, try to pick him up. Even if you're going to stash him, try to pick him up because he's getting better. He's got very good receivers. He lost Eckler, but Justin Jackson looks like he's going to step in. He also has Josh Kelly. I think he's someone you pick up, and if you need him, roster him. But if you can, just hold him
in one of our leagues. By the way, what's up, guys? Better late than never.
Oh, hey, 2020 is here. Okay.
Well, to go through your thinking with regard to quarterback, and I'm not ready to call him a bust, but Lamar Jackson has not been performing the way based on where he was drafted, right?
Even worse. You're 100% correct.
Now, but here's the thing, and you'll be surprised to hear. So after 4 games last year, Lamar Jackson had 320 rushing yards. This year, 235. Okay, it's 100 rushing yards. So it's not that big of a deal. It adds up, though. Touchdowns, he only had 1 rushing touchdown this time last year. He only has 1 this year. In passing, there's not much of a disparity either. 700 yards passing last year after 4 games, 759 this year. So he actually has more passing yards this year than he did last year. The disparity comes in the touchdowns. He had thrown for 13 touchdowns this time last year, only has 7 this year. Remember, with quarterbacks with those 4 points every time he gets that touchdown, that's 24 points right there.
Right.
So,
but he did get to play the Dolphins in week 1 last year.
I think
I think that's the disparity right there.
That is true. But I guess my point being, based on where he was drafted, again, I'm not going to call him a bust. I would take him. I would say he's a top 10 quarterback right now, but he was drafted as a number 1 or a number 2 quarterback.
Yes.
And right now he's not playing, or doesn't look like a number 1 or number 2 quarterback. The surprise, which is crazy that it's a surprise, is Aaron Rodgers. It shouldn't be a surprise because the guy's a Hall of Famer. Everybody knows he's a Hall of Famer, but everyone thought he was washed up. He was drafted as an afterthought, and even in some leagues, he was available after the draft. Yeah. And now, if you have Rodgers
unleashing him, he's finally in an offense. Matt LaFleur has been put together a fantastic offense, and it's not even the talent around him because Devontae Adams has played basically 1.5 games, and Alan Lazard's even out. So he's got some talent in that new tight end, Tanya, and that's obviously very nice. But I think this scheme is just perfect for him. Him and Matt LaFleur are a match made in heaven.
Yeah, we talked about Rodgers a little bit. We talked about Rodgers a little bit last night. And yeah, I think people had kind of flattened a bit on Rodgers because like last year, they had a good record. He was putting together good records, but he wasn't putting together fantasy numbers. He was putting wins on the board, but he wasn't giving fantasy players the stats they need for him to be a rostered quarterback. That's where people went a little sour on him. So they changed head coaches. And again, he looks like the league MVP this year.
He does.
Right now.
He was.
If there wasn't a Russell Wilson or out there.
I got to tell you, I think the one quarterback that really is the biggest surprise, good, bad, or indifferent, is Josh Allen. None of us were big on him. And you know something? He didn't deserve for us to be big on him. When you look at his completion percentage, there was never anything to write home about, nothing ever north of 55%. He was great on the ground, and he gave you those numbers, and he gave you the rushing touchdowns. Nobody expected him to pass like this. Now, you can make the argument that Stephon Diggs, he's going to go in, and he's going to up his game quite a bit. There's no question. He definitely gives him a nice target to work with. But Josh Allen has made that next step. He made that next leap. Experts had him as QB7. None of us believed it. It was a prove it to me and show it to me. He is very surprising. And at this point, 4 weeks in, I've completely bought in on him.
Oh, looks like we had a little technical issue for a second there. But okay, yes. Josh Allen, big surprise. And, I think a lot of that is Stephon Diggs. It opens up the playbook quite a bit when you get a player like that. And I think we're seeing that. Just like in Houston where you took away a Hopkins. It kind of closes things a little bit and it affects numbers. But Allen's been a surprise, and if you've had him, you're very, very happy.
Yeah, it's interesting when you lose a receiver. How good is the quarterback? How much can they adjust? Look at Aaron Rodgers. He lost Devontae, and he's still throwing for 4 scores. Drew Brees, he's definitely not the same Drew Brees, but he's had some very serviceable weeks without Michael Thomas. It hasn't been totally awful. Even Kirk Cousins, other than that one horrific game where he actually lost you, that if you had Kirk Cousins that week, you lost your game. He gave you negative points. What kind of an asshole that quarterback gives you negative points for 4 full quarters? Seriously, no real anger there. But now he's making Justin Jefferson, or maybe Justin Jefferson is making him look good. He lost to Stephon Diggs, but he's been putting up good numbers 3 out of 4 weeks so far.
So we have another question from Kenneth. Would Darius Slayton be a wise play this week against Dallas? My answer is very, very abrupt here. No, do not start anybody for the Giants.
I disagree with you. I would start your grandmother against the Dallas Cowboys defense right now.
Honestly, you might be right, Kamish.
I really think they're going to have to throw. They're going to get behind. Dak Prescott's going to just be slinging the ball. And Daniel Jones is going to have to do the same thing. And for the first time in 4 weeks or 5 weeks, Daniel Jones is going to have more than a quarter of a second to throw the ball. So I think I would start Slayton. Again, Kenneth, like we said before, it depends on who else you have on your bench or who are the other wide receivers. But yeah, I like anybody against the Dallas defense.
And adding to that, they can't run the ball. They simply cannot run the ball. So they're going to have to throw.
So as I was telling you guys earlier when I was in New York today, Okay, wasn't super happy about it. I went in, I saw a few customers, and I left. I'm already out of New York. I didn't eat, I didn't do anything. I went to my customers, I wore my mask, and I left. Okay. And then as I was driving out, I was thinking, all right, we're going to do a show tonight. And then I'm thinking, besides if you're a fan of any New York team and you're stuck inside with COVID, I mean, you're jumping off bridges right now. I mean, you got two OFER teams. They just don't. I don't see a light at the end of the tunnel really for either one of them at the moment. It's just not pretty. I mean, compared to South Florida fans right now who have a team in the NBA final, we do have the Dolphins, but at least we won a game, and maybe there's hope. But I was just thinking about that on the drive out today. That there's just, and I just heard that Flacco is going to start this week for the Jets, which could be a boost, compared to Sam Darnold. We'll see. The Giants, they get Dallas. So if there's a game that any fantasy player can do anything, you're right. This is the week, but I just don't have any confidence in any New York player at all on either team at the moment.
You know something? It's funny. Flacco starting, to me, removed the only fantasy relevant player on the Jets. So Jamison Crowder actually is a very good wide receiver too. When Sam Darnold is in, Darnold and Flacco are very different. Yeah. Sam Darnold has a man crush on Crowder. He'll target him a minimum 10 times a game. You can pretty much pencil in 7 grabs for 100 yards. That's a very healthy week. When Crowder's healthy and Darnold's in, he is fantasy relevant. Flacco tends to spread it around a little bit more. I actually have Crowder in one of my leagues, and I'm considering sitting him because of Flacco. At least Darnold made one player on that team relevant because he likes to focus in on a receiver, a la Drew Brees and Deshaun Watson and then Kyler Murray and all these other guys. So
Flacco is actually perfect this season. He's 2 for 2 for 11 yards. I mean, are you going to
2 different receivers too?
But at the end of last year, he looked terrible. I mean, before he got hurt in Denver, he was terrible. 14 for 20, 182 yards, 18 for 28, 177 yards. And this is with Courtland Sutton, 20 for 32, 174 yards. I'm telling you, this guy is washed up. I feel bad for him. It's like when Marino retired, and there was talk about him possibly going to the Vikings. I don't know if you guys remember that. And
remember that.
We were all like, oh, he's got to retire a Dolphin. And thank God he did, because when you see these legends, and I'm not calling Flacco a legend, but when you see these guys that perform at the highest level in the Super Bowl even just end up on these teams and they're just terrible, it's really sad to see. I saw Matt Ryan the other night, Monday night, and I'm telling you, I saw a little bit of slip in there. Matt Ryan's been in the league a long time. I don't know how much longer he's going to last. But it's sad to see when these guys that we've all been
the drop off, right? Yeah. The Brady, we call it the Brady drop off, right? But we've been waiting for it for 10 years
until he threw 5 touchdowns last week. Here's an interesting question, Seth, based on your comment. What 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks took their very next team that they went to after they left their, team that they were predominantly with for years to the playoffs in their first year there?
Well, I would say Joe Montana.
That would have been mine. That would have been my guess.
And the other one?
Yeah, probably. You got to give me a second.
Let's see. They left Brett Favre.
Yep, Brett Favre.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
So does that mean that Drew Brees didn't do it when he left? No, I guess New Orleans didn't get in the playoffs his first year.
I'm not saying that there's only 2. I don't think he took him there the next year. I just know those 2 for sure. There might have been more.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Hold on a second. Wait a minute. What 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks? Drew Brees is not in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
He will be, but he is not yet.
He will be, but not in yet.
So Seth, I don't know if this was on purpose or if you even noticed, but I'm going to give a shout out to Eddie Van Halen, who passed away yesterday. And right behind you is your Van Halen.
Yeah, no, it's not on purpose. That's always been there.
I know. So it's kind of apropos tonight. And, going on to music for a second, it kind of, Van Halen for us, our age range, was like the epitome of growing up, right? And the music, and it was amazing, and the music they put out and everything. So it was certainly a huge loss to the music industry. And I know you met him personally, Seth. And
I was actually reading I won't go into that right now, but I was reading the former manager of Van Halen wrote a book recently, and I recently read it. And there was a funny story in there about how right after Eddie Van Halen had married Valerie Bertinelli, he was out on the road, and of course Valerie asked him to be faithful, and there's no way anybody in Van Halen is going to be faithful. So Eddie fooled around, and then all of a sudden, a month later, there's a paternity suit against him. So the manager goes to Eddie and says, "Man, I thought you weren't going to fool around. What happened? Is this legit? What's going on?" He's like, "I swear to God, I didn't sleep with her." And the manager said, "Okay, thank God you didn't sleep with her." He goes, "But she could get pregnant because we had oral sex and I finished and she, took it." And the manager thought he was kidding and just looked at him. And he's like, "Eddie, you do realize you cannot get a girl pregnant through oral sex, right?" And he's like, "No, man, I didn't know that." And the manager said at that point, he realized that he actually felt sorry for Eddie, because here's a guy who's been playing in a band since he was like 13 years old. He didn't know any better, right? Where did he have an opportunity? He left school. They have an opportunity to learn about the birds and the bees and you would think you would know stuff like that, but it's not automatic and commonplace.
Right. If you never learned about it, it's not necessarily common sense.
So you're saying you can't get pregnant?
There's only one way to find out. Come on over.
If that's the case, God, Keith, you must have hundreds of kids running around.
Listen, I can play guitar, so there's that too.
But I do recommend the book. It's a fantastic book, especially now. It's very relevant. And some other time I'll tell my Eddie Van Halen story about meeting him and the porno shoot and the whole. I'll go through all that some other time.
All right, sounds good. That's for Thursday night.
Yeah, there you go.
Anyway, so Keith, 2020, we talked a little bit about the COVID situation. We talked a little bit. We gave the injury news for tomorrow night. We talked about the Washington football team situation going on there, and then of course we talked about some players. So I don't know if you had any thoughts or anything on that, and then we're gonna wrap up our Wednesday night discussion and look forward to a political debate going tonight, and then
absolutely,
and then Thursday night football.
I just want to say, I'm so excited. I'm so happy for Alex Smith. This is just one of the good guys in the league. He's just always done everything right. He happens to actually be an exceptional quarterback. If you ask me, he's by far the best football player on that team. And I'm so glad to see him be able to get back on the field, get back into practice. I honestly think he'll ultimately unseat Kyle Allen because I think he is the best quarterback on that team. It's just considering what he went through, that horrific injury. It's a great story. I love when a guy can come back and he's going to grit it out. I'm really happy for that guy. I think it's a great story. I'm sure you beat it to death with COVID. This thing is just nuts. I hope everyone's making the right moves, the right choices. Making sure you got people to play. I don't know. I don't know what your thoughts on Tennessee. We can do our statistics and percentages. What do you think that game has a chance of actually going off? You guys talk about that?
Yeah, we did it 50-50.
I'm about 50-50 as well right now.
I'm 50-50, and I think that anybody that has anybody on the Bills or the Titans needs to be ready to have somebody else, and even anybody that has somebody on the Patriots needs to be ready. The Patriots or the Broncos needs to be ready to substitute that out.
Stephon Gilmore. I mean, that's a big loss for New England. Big
Well,
loss.
he did go to dinner with Cam Newton the day before he was diagnosed. So,
you see, going to dinner with Cam
You know,
Newton is hazardous to your health.
Very quickly back to the Washington football team. That whole division, there was a lot of talk today about, in the past couple of days, about that NFC East division, that basically they're all in it. I mean, the bottom team is 0-4, and they're only 1 game out of, or 1.5 games out of first place.
Philly leading it at 1-2-1.
Yeah.
And they might have a home game. Terrible.
Right. So it's very interesting. They're all playing hard. There's no, we're only 4 games in. I understand that, but it's not like someone's 4-0 and someone's 0-4. So Washington had to make the change and go forward. And I think you might be right. I think we may see Alex Smith sooner than later.
Yeah, he's got a lot of football left
in Washington. And, Haskins was just a guy that it's not, Ron Rivera's guy. So maybe it's kind of like a Bears situation where they were just kind of waiting for the right moment to pull Trubisky halfway through the game, and the GM and the owner couldn't do anything about it. They put Foles in. Now we know doesn't seem to be the answer either. Foles seems to be a good guy to bring in as bring him in at halftime and rally the team, but to start him, not so much.
Foles is very much a Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's going to get very streaky and go on long streaks. I mean, come on, this guy was a big part of that Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
And then he just completely cools off and makes decisions that you just can't imagine. And on that note, it's really interesting to see the rookie play at quarterback this year. Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow are showing absolutely, not only they belong as an NFL quarterback, they're thriving, and they're even putting up good fantasy numbers. So here's my question to you guys. Another under-over. With that being said, how many weeks, starting from today, before we get our first look at Tua Tagovailoa? I mean, we see what's going on. It's at the point where this offensive line is serviceable. So it's not like you're going to say, let's not throw him in there and do what they did to Josh Rosen. It's a halfway decent, not phenomenal, pass blocking offensive line. So how many weeks out from now do you think we're going to get our first look at Tua?
I think what you might see, when's the Dolphins bye week? In
week 9, maybe?
Week 9? Yeah, I don't know if they'll wait that long. I mean, there was already talk of it. They've already kind of put the squash on that. I think you might see it, depending on what happens over the next 2 weeks. If they can kind of win another game or, another 1 or 2 games.
You got to give me a week because I want to see who. Give me a week 7 or week 8?
I'm going to say week 7.
Kamish?
Probably after week 11 or 12. Look, first of all, it's pronounced Tagovailoa, but second of all, more importantly, we have to realize that here's a guy coming off of major surgery. And the more you strengthen what his hip and his legs, his core, the better he's going to be. And the more he learns this offense. So it came out today that he's been going into the defensive meetings, asking them how he can be a better quarterback and reviewing the defensive film, not just of opponents or the offensive playbook. This guy is going to learn the system. He's going to learn how to do it. He does it every day in practice. We just don't see it and we don't hear about it. If he was ready, if he was the guy, he would be out there. There's no reason not to put him out there if, number one, he knew the system, and number two, they weren't concerned about his health. As far as I'm concerned, with Flores saying he's not going to have, the media is not going to influence his decision in any manner whatsoever, I don't see Tua coming out unless there's a problem with Fitz as far as getting hurt. So I'm fine. Look, I'm wearing the jersey. I'm fine with wearing the jersey without seeing him play. I'm fine.
But if you were pressed and someone was to say, if at all this season, you could say not at all this season, what week do you think you're going to see Tua?
Like I said, I think it wouldn't be till after week 11. What everyone's predicting is the Dolphins play the Jets on week 10. Then they have a bye week, week 11. Then they play the Jets again on week 12, and then they play the Bengals in week 13. So what they're saying is week 10, he comes in against the Jets. Then he has the bye. Then he plays the Jets again. Then he plays the Bengals. But then Kansas City is the week after that, and then the Patriots. So I don't see him coming in. I hope he doesn't come in, I will tell you this. Look, as a fan, when I see Fitz run the ball and he's down for a second, I'm like, oh, are we going to see Tua now? And I love Fitz. I don't want him to get hurt. But I would love to see him. But you know what? I'm okay just repping and not seeing him out on the field right now.
I agree with you as well. I wanted to just say I love the long-term game plan. Everyone knows this year was just another year as a part of the Dolphins rebuild. And there's no reason to rush him in. I love what they did with Aaron Rodgers. They made him play for a year behind. Actually, I think it was more than a year behind Favre. Let him really develop and learn the game. Same thing with Carson Palmer. I have no problem with it. But I think you pegged it, Kamish. What a great time to put him in between the Jets, then the bye, and then maybe even in that second Jets game. To get some soft matchups with the Jets in Cincinnati. So I'm going to pick that right after the bye week. I find it quite amazing that with
Fitzpatrick, how he plays and his age, that he's not getting injured. The way he's a big guy, but still he's taking a lot of hits. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
You can't like football and not like Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, he's great. I mean, he's got a lot going there. So we're gonna wrap up tonight. We appreciate it. Everybody listening, you can always email us at buzzfantasyfootball@gmail.com. Ask us any questions, and we should see you on Saturday.
All right.
Everybody enjoy.